Hey, I'm Courtney Waterman, your tutor. Lover of anime, manga, and math. And you just tuned into another session of Tutor Me Sempai. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're jumping into a 9th grade topic, identifying like terms. Now, if you're new to my channel, I'll be putting timecodes in for this video in the description box below. So use that to skip ahead to whatever part of the video you think is most interesting. As always, if you have any questions about what we see today or even your own homework, you can always put in the comment box below or visit my Facebook page at Tutor Me Sempai and tell me all about it there. At the end of this video, I'll be linking my 9th grade playlist in which I cover a lot more topics. So if you're interested in that, make sure you stay tuned. This video is going to have 2 parts, so leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and let's get started. So today we're going to be talking about how to identify your like terms in your polynomial. And this is going to be a very important topic because it's crucial to first be able to identify your like terms when you're trying to combine polynomials or simplify polynomials. If you can't identify like terms, you will not be able to do either of those two things. So we first need to identify them so that we can later combine them. But what do I mean by term? When I say like terms, what am I referring to? Well, your polynomial will have one to many terms. Each term will be combined with either an addition sign or a minus sign. So subtraction sign there. Anything that is combined with addition or subtraction can be considered a term. So if you have a whole polynomial that says ax to the b plus cx to the d plus ex to the f, this is a term, that's a term, that's a term. Notice each of them are separated by addition. I can change this to be subtraction, and they're still going to be terms. They're combined with addition or subtraction. These are your 3 terms for this polynomial. If you just have a monomial, you just have the one term. If you have 2 terms, you're going to have a binomial. So you can think of your terms as anything that's added or subtracted to something else in your polynomial. Now, when you look at this term, there's 3 parts that we can easily identify. We have our a, our x, and our b. Our a being our coefficient, our x being our variable, and our b being our exponent. So we can easily identify these 3 parts of this term. Now, when we need to identify our like terms, only 2 of these are actually necessary. We do not have to concern ourselves with the coefficient. When we're just identifying, the coefficient does not matter. When you're combining like terms, the coefficient does matter. Don't think that it never matters. Just identifying your like terms, they don't matter. But moving on, they become rather important, actually crucial. So we're just talking about identifying. We're going to focus on your variable and your exponent. That's what's going to be key to identifying like terms. So we talked about what a term is. Now we got to figure out what this whole idea of like term is. Well, think of it like matching. Remember, I said you had this whole cx to the d plus ex to the f. If you're trying to match, you're trying to find, let's say, pairs of something. Well, in trying to identify like terms, you could think of it as trying to find a pair of variable and exponents that are common with something else in your polynomial. So in your polynomial, let's say you have x to the 5th, and somewhere else in your polynomial, like you're adding, yada, 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 somewhere else you run across something like this, x to the 4th. Are you going to be considered like terms? Remember, we're trying to find a matching pair. If we're looking for this, right, the pair, it's going to be the variable and the exponent. Is this a matching pair? No. We may have the variable, but we do not have the exponent. We need a matching pair. So instead of x to the 4th, if we came across another x to the 5th, would this be a matching pair? Yes. Same exact variable, same exact exponent. This is a matching pair. We would call that a like term. And I said it before, coefficients do not matter. So you can have 100x to the fifth plus dot dot dot. You can have, let's say, 20x to the fifth, and these would still be considered like terms because you had the same pair, variable, exponent, pair. It doesn't matter what your coefficient is when identifying like terms. But this is a pretty easy example. We only have one variable here. What happens if we have more than one variable? How do we then address this? Well, let's say we have x, y, and you want to find a like term. Well, you can still kind of work with the whole idea of pairs, except now the pair is going to be that pair. What's the exponent for that x? What's the exponent for that y? And can you find this same pair somewhere else? So let's say we have x to the second, y to the second, and you're looking somewhere in your polynomial, you run across something that looks like this. Well, let's look at this y. Do we have the same y? Yes, we have the same y squared, y squared. That part of the pair looks good. Do we have the same x? No, that's x squared. This is x cubed. This is not a like term. They don't have the same pair of x and y's here. X and y's are not the same. What if you did this? X, y cubed, and somewhere else in your polynomial you saw y cubed x. Is this the same? Is this considered a like term? Well, look at this. We're talking about your variables and your exponents. If you compare x's to x's, they exist. Same exponent and same variable in both locations. How about your y? Same variable, same exponent. The order doesn't matter. You can swap around the order when you multiply, so the order doesn't matter. As long as you have the same x with the same exponent and the same y with the same exponent, that's a like term. And you can expand this to having multiple variables. You don't just need to have one or two. You can have something like x, y, z, and you're trying to find some combination of exponents. If you have dot 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 x, y, z, and this is 4, 3, 2, that's not going to be a like term. Yes, your y is the same with both the y variable and the exponent, and you do have x's and z's, but that's swapped. Your exponent swapped. The order matters for your exponents. Obviously, x to the fourth is not the same as x squared. This is not going to be a like term. So now that we've talked about how to identify like terms, let's put it to practice with a quick example. So here we have a rather quick example in which you're going to try to identify where we may have some like terms. So let's look at this, let's read it and see what we got going. We have x squared times y plus y squared, z squared minus x to the fourth, z to the fifth plus y squared x minus 5y squared, z squared plus z to the fifth, x to the fourth minus y. Now we want to find out, are there any like terms? We're not going to do anything with it except identify if they exist. So let's start with our first one. Let's start with our first one and see what we have. So we have x squared y. Is there another x squared y? That's what you got to look for. X squared times y. So this is a y, but there's no x here. There's an x, but there's no y here. There's a y, and there's an x. So we're going to write that. Y squared x. There's a y, but no x. There's an x, but no y. And there's a y, but no x. So this is the only potential pair. Not saying it's a pair just yet, but it's a potential pair based just on the variables present. Now we got to look at the exponents. Remember, it depends on both the variable and the exponent. Here we have x squared y, y squared x. We're squareds, and they have x and y's, but it's not the right variable being squared. So these are not going to be like terms. that means these do not have like terms. So we can, let's just cross those out. Not like terms. Let's start with this one then. Let's move on. And we're going to have y squared, z squared. There's no y here, although there's a z. We've already looked at that, so we're going to ignore it. There's a y here and there's a z, and there's a coefficient, but there's a y and a z. So we're going to bring that all down. Squared. There's a z with no y, and there's a y, no z. Are these two considered like terms? Well, let's look at it. Y and z both present. We have a squared, that y is squared, that z is squared. But this one has a coefficient. This one doesn't. Does that mean that they're not like terms? No. These are indeed like terms. Remember, your coefficient doesn't come into play when just identifying your like terms. It doesn't matter what your coefficient is. These are like terms because they have the same y squared, y squared. We have the same z squared, z squared. The same pair of variable exponents are present in both. So, going back here, we can say that these two are indeed like terms. Let's move on. We have negative x to the fourth, z to the fifth. We've already looked at that. We've already looked at that. Let's look at this one. We have z to the fifth, x to the fourth. It's positive, right? And that one doesn't have any x or z, so we're going to ignore it. Are these considered like terms? Well, let's look at it. They both have x's and z's, but how are their exponents? X to the fourth, x to the fourth. Looking good. Z to the fifth, z to the fifth. Looking good. But they're not in the same order. That's xz, and this is zx. Not in the same order. Is this still going to be a like term? Yes. Order doesn't matter when it comes to your variables. As long as it's the same variable with the same exponent, it's a like term. And the coefficient, once again, doesn't matter. That's negative, that's positive. Doesn't matter for identifying like terms. These are considered like terms. So we can say this and this are going to be like terms. And all that's left is a y, but there's nothing else to compare it to, so we leave it alone. This is showing you that these are the same. Well, not the same, but they're like terms. And these are like terms. So I hope you were able to follow along with today's video. And I hope you now understand how you can identify your like terms. However, if you have any questions about what you saw today, or even on homework, feel free to put in the comment box below, or visit my Facebook page at Tutor Me Sempai and tell me all about it there. If you hadn't done so already, hit that like. It surely helps the channel by letting YouTube know that you found a video helpful. And if you found a video helpful, so can someone else. So leave a like, hit the notification bell, smash the subscribe button, and share this video with a friend. Well, that's all the time I have for today. I really hope it's helped with your homework, and look forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Courtney, here's your playlist, and this has been another session of Tutor Me Sempai.